certain politicians, people who argue that climate change is a hoax.
And his politics probably aren't mine, and that's okay, I don't care.
Paul McCartney has spent decades shaping music history, but this time, it wasn't his voice on a record that made headlines, it was what he said on live TV. In front of millions, the legendary Beatle took direct aim at Donald Trump, calling out his leadership, his policies, and the division he left behind. With a history of clashing with celebrities, will Trump stay silent, or is a fiery response just around the corner?
I think it was like that for everyone. It was just so horrific. You couldn't take it in, and I couldn't take it in.
He has never been one to shy away from speaking his mind, but his latest remarks about Donald Trump on live television took things to a whole new level. It wasn't just a passing comment or a subtle dig, it was a full-blown, unfiltered critique of Trump's leadership, and it sent shockwaves across the internet. Fans were left in awe, critics had a field day, and the media couldn't stop talking about it. During the live interview, McCartney didn't hold back. He spoke about the state of the world and how, in his view, Trump played a major role in dividing people instead of bringing them together. He specifically called out the way Trump's rhetoric gave people the confidence to be openly hostile toward those of a different race, religion, or background. In his words, Trump had unleashed the ugly side of America, allowing a new level of antagonism to spread across the country.
The phrase kept coming in my head, jerk of all jerks. It was just like, this is just a jerk. This is not even a guy politically motivated. It's just some total random thing. I go, hey, Bob.
McCartney also criticized Trump's stance on climate change, something he has been passionate about for years. He pointed to the former president's decision to pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord as an example of reckless leadership. He referred to Trump as a mad captain, a reference he had already made in his 2018 song Despite Repeated Warnings, which was aimed at world leaders ignoring climate change. According to McCartney, leaders who deny the reality of global warming are steering the world toward disaster, much like a reckless ship captain ignoring warnings of an iceberg ahead.
And I learned so much about coronavirus. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune, I don't know.
Beyond policy, McCartney took issue with Trump's overall approach to leadership. He criticized the way Trump dismissed scientific facts, the way he handled the COVID-19 pandemic, and how he encouraged a culture of misinformation. He made it clear that, in his view, Trump's time in office represented a dangerous shift in global politics, and he wasn't afraid to say it loud and clear. The reaction in the room was immediate. Some audience members cheered, while others seemed stunned that McCartney had gone that far with his criticism. It's one thing for celebrities to make subtle political statements, but this was direct and unapologetic. Some looked around, unsure of whether to clap or stay silent. Others erupted into applause, supporting McCartney's bold stance. The real explosion, though, happened online. Within minutes, clips of the interview started circulating on Twitter, YouTube, and news websites. Fans flooded social media with support, praising McCartney for using his platform to speak out. Some even called it one of the most powerful moments in his career, proving that even at 81, he's still got the ability to shake things up.
Can you please go away, guys? Can you please go away? Thank you. Bye-bye. Hey, could you please go away? No?
Of course, not everyone was on board. Trump's supporters were quick to fire back, accusing McCartney of being out of touch or just another Hollywood elite trying to influence politics. Some argued that celebrities should stick to entertainment and leave political discussions to the experts. But whether people agreed with him or not, one thing was clear: McCartney's words had struck a nerve. Major news outlets picked up the story almost instantly. Headlines ranged from Paul McCartney slams Trump in fiery TV interview to McCartney's brutal takedown of Trump Sparks debate. Some reports focused on his environmental message, while others highlighted the social and racial issues he brought up. The debate wasn't just about what McCartney said it was, about how artists and public figures use their influence to challenge political leaders. This wasn't the first time McCartney and Trump had been on opposite sides. Their history goes back years, and while they've never had a direct confrontation, there's been tension between them for a while. Back in 2006, Trump publicly mocked McCartney after his messy divorce from Heather Mills. McCartney hadn't signed a prenuptial agreement before marrying her, which ended up costing him a huge sum in the settlement. Trump, never one to miss an opportunity to comment on someone's personal affairs, criticized McCartney for not protecting his fortune, implying that he should have been smarter about it. That was just one of the smaller jabs over the years. The real divide between them, though, has always been political. McCartney's progressive views on climate change, social justice, and global unity are in direct contrast to Trump's policies. While Trump rolled back environmental protections and dismissed climate science, McCartney was pushing for action. While Trump downplayed racial issues, McCartney was speaking out against discrimination. Their worldviews have always clashed, and McCartney's latest comments only solidified that divide.
Paul McCartney, terrific guy, and you see him around New York, everybody loves him, and his politics probably aren't mine, and that's okay, I don't care.
Paul McCartney and Donald Trump have never seen eye to eye. Their differences go beyond politics. They represent two completely different ways of looking at the world. On one side, McCartney has spent decades using his voice to promote unity, environmental responsibility, and social change. On the other, Trump's leadership has been marked by division, climate change denial, and policies that McCartney believes have set progress back. Over the years, McCartney hasn't been shy about calling Trump out, and their history of clashes proves just how much the former Beatle disapproves of Trump's influence. McCartney has taken subtle and not-so-subtle jabs at Trump for a while, but one of his most direct criticisms came in 2018 when he released the song Despite Repeated Warnings. This wasn't just another song about politics, it was a warning about leadership gone wrong. The lyrics tell the story of a reckless captain steering a ship toward disaster, ignoring all the warnings around him. It didn't take long for fans and critics to connect the dots. McCartney later confirmed that the song was inspired by world leaders who refused to listen to experts, and yes, Trump was a big part of that.
It had affected me musically. I just knew it was a tragedy.
He didn't try to sugarcoat it either. He said outright that some people in power are like a mad captain who refuses to change course, even when it's clear they're headed for trouble. He also pointed out that Trump wasn't the only one like this, but he was certainly a major example. The song became a quiet anthem for those who were frustrated with Trump's leadership, especially when it came to global issues. One of the biggest reasons McCartney has spoken out against Trump is climate change. This isn't just a casual interest for him. It's something he's been passionate about for years. He's worked with environmental groups, supported plant-based eating as a way to reduce carbon emissions, and used his music to raise awareness about the urgent need for action. So when Trump pulled the US out of the Paris Climate Accord, it didn't sit well with McCartney. The agreement was meant to bring countries together to fight global warming, and Trump's decision to withdraw made it clear that he wasn't interested in tackling the crisis. McCartney called climate denial the most ridiculous thing ever, and couldn't believe that in the 21st century there were still leaders who ignored the overwhelming scientific evidence. He didn't stop at just criticizing Trump's decision. He used interviews, concerts, and public events to talk about the importance of protecting the planet. His frustration wasn't just about Trump, it was about any leader who refused to take climate change seriously. But because of Trump's massive influence on global politics, McCartney saw his stance as especially dangerous. In his mind, ignoring climate warnings wasn't just bad policy, it was reckless and irresponsible leadership. For McCartney, Trump's impact went beyond climate policies. He also believed that Trump's presidency had created an atmosphere where racism and division were becoming more visible. In interviews, McCartney shared his concern that Trump had unleashed the ugly side of America. He felt that before Trump took office, society had made a lot of progress toward racial equality. But suddenly, it seemed like things were moving backward. McCartney wasn't alone in thinking this. Throughout Trump's presidency, there was a rise in hate crimes, racial tensions, and open hostility toward minority groups. McCartney believed that Trump's words and actions encouraged people to feel like they had permission to be antagonistic, if not outright violent, toward others. As someone who grew up during a time of great social change and witnessed firsthand the power of unity through music, he couldn't just sit back and stay silent. For McCartney, this wasn't just about politics, it was about what kind of world future generations would live in. He's always been someone who believes in using his platform for good, whether it's singing about love, peace, or global issues. And when he sees a leader making decisions that he believes go against those values, he speaks up. Paul McCartney has never been afraid to use music as a way to send a message, and with Despite Repeated Warnings, he did exactly that. Released in 2018 as part of his album Egypt Station, the song was a direct response to world leaders who ignore urgent warnings, especially about climate change. It didn't take long for people to realize that McCartney was talking about Donald Trump. Even though he didn't mention Trump by name, the lyrics made it obvious who the mad captain steering the ship toward disaster was meant to represent. McCartney has always believed that music can be a powerful force for change. Throughout his career, both as a Beatle and as a solo artist, he has used his songs to comment on war, peace, love, and justice. But despite repeated warnings was different. It was a full-blown warning about where the world was headed if people in power continued to ignore scientists, experts, and the realities of climate change. The song tells the story of a reckless leader who refuses to listen to those around him, even as the danger becomes clearer. The lyrics describe how the captain is warned again and again about the looming disaster, but instead of changing course, he insists on moving forward, right toward the iceberg. The symbolism here is hard to miss. It's not just about a ship, it's about the world. And the captain? Well, it's clear McCartney is talking about Trump. One of the most powerful lines in the song says, "Those who shout the loudest may not always be the smartest." That alone sounds like a direct shot at Trump, who was known for dismissing experts, scientists, and critics while pushing his own version of reality. McCartney later confirmed in interviews that the song was inspired by leaders like Trump, who refuse to acknowledge climate change and continue to act as if the crisis isn't real. The idea of the mad captain running the ship isn't just about one issue, it's about leadership in general. The song paints a picture of someone who is stubborn, arrogant, and completely unwilling to take advice from those who actually know what they're talking about. It's easy to see why so many people connected it to Trump's presidency. Whether it was his handling of climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, or racial tensions, Trump was widely criticized for ignoring expert advice and pushing forward with his own agenda, no matter the consequences. Throughout history, music has been one of the strongest tools for protest. The Beatles knew this back in the 1960s when they wrote songs about war, love, and social change. McCartney himself has always believed that music can do more than just entertain. It can inspire people to think, to act, and to demand better from their leaders. What makes music so powerful is that it speaks to people in a way that speeches and news articles can't. A song can make someone feel something on a deep level, and that emotion can lead to real change. Despite repeated warnings wasn't just a political statement, it was a wake-up call. It painted a vivid picture of what happens when leaders refuse to listen, and it left listeners with the unsettling feeling that the world was heading towards something dangerous if people didn't start paying attention. McCartney has always used his platform to talk about issues that matter to him, but despite repeated warnings was different because it wasn't just about one issue. It was about the dangers of bad leadership in general. The song didn't just call out Trump's climate policies, it spoke to a larger problem of powerful figures ignoring the truth and leading people down a dangerous path.
How did you stay cool through that? And people are like, we hate the Beatles, they're the devil. And
I don't know.
Yeah.
You just have to. So you do.
From the moment the song was released, fans picked up on its message. Social media was flooded with discussions about how the lyrics seemed to describe Trump's leadership style perfectly. People shared the song as a form of protest, using it as a way to express their frustration with what was happening in the world. It became an anthem for those who were worried about the direction things were heading in, especially when it came to climate change. During Trump's presidency, despite repeated warnings, gained even more attention. Every time Trump made another statement dismissing climate change or rolling back environmental protections, people pointed to McCartney's song as proof that this kind of leadership was dangerous. Environmental activists praised McCartney for using his voice to highlight the issue, and many felt that the song perfectly captured their fears about where the world was going. What made the song even more impactful was the fact that it came from McCartney, one of the most respected and beloved musicians of all time. His words carried weight, and his willingness to speak out showed that even at 76 years old, at the time of the album's release, he wasn't going to stay silent about the issues that mattered. Donald Trump rarely stays quiet when a celebrity criticizes him, especially someone as famous as Paul McCartney. Over the years, Trump has fired back at actors, musicians, and public figures who have spoken against him. With McCartney making strong comments about his leadership, many have been waiting to see if Trump will respond. So far, Trump hasn't directly addressed McCartney's remarks. That might seem unusual given his history of attacking critics, but sometimes he chooses not to amplify the criticism by responding. However, if history repeats itself, he could hit back at any moment. Trump often used Twitter, before he was banned, or rally speeches to insult opponents, calling them overrated or washed up. He has previously clashed with celebrities like Meryl Streep, Robert De Niro, Taylor Swift, and Bruce Springsteen, using personal attacks to discredit them. McCartney, however, is different. He isn't just another pop star, he's a global icon. Attacking him could backfire, especially with his fan base spanning generations. But Trump isn't known for backing down. If he does respond, it could be another classic Trump-style insult, or he may let his supporters do the talking. Either way, McCartney's words have already made an impact. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.